Hello everyone. Today I am going to give you some important tips on the listening skills. Why listening is important? Listening is a part of the communication process which involves receiving, understanding, and interpreting oral signs. The listener is expected to reconstruct as closely as possible the original intended meaning of the speaker's message. One needs to understand that hearing and listening are not same. Hearing is often an involuntary, on the contrary, is a more sophisticated mental process. When you actively pay attention and attempt to make sense of what you are hearing. How often during a conversation have you been distracted and missed important names, numbers, or instructions? Well, a successful person that you want to be just cannot afford not to listen. Some of the important objectives of listening skills. We need to understand the role of listening, learn to strengthen the customer and employees' relations, know the nuances of different listening process, appreciate the advantages of being a good listener, get acquainted with strategies for dealing with different types of listening, effectively how to handle the problems related to listening. However, listening skills can be sharpened to enhance someone's performance. Let us look into some of the advantages of being a good listener. A good listener clearly scores over the rest. People who listen with attention are trusted more than those who just keep talking without giving others a chance to air their views. Listening is the key to gain trust. Good listeners, they do have the following advantages: credibility. They are perceived as competent and capable. Good managers are good at listening, and good listeners are seen as potentially good leaders. Then people appreciate listening, they support each other. Listening shows respect and empathy for partners, clients, and colleagues. Getting things done lets you to achieve your goals. And then you learn a lot by simply listening. Exchanging. If you take pains to listen to people, it's more likely that others will also listen to you. This is the exchange principle and would help a great deal in achieving one's goals. Now, let us look into the steps that involve in the listening process. The first step is in the listening process is hearing. At this stage, you simply pay enough attention to make sure you have heard the message. Then, the second step in the listening process is interpretation, signals your understanding of what you have listened to. It differs from person to person. People can interpret words differently. The third step in the listening process is evaluation. Here, you decide what to do with the information you have received, whether to believe or not. And the final step in the listening process is the response from the listener. This is a verbal or a visual response that lets the speaker know whether you have got the message and what your reaction is. So, to be an effective listener, we need to connect with people, places, situations, and ideas they know, and making questions. Determine what the speaker is saying about the people, places, and ideas by making meaning and paying attention to those words and ideas that are unclear. How listening helps us. Listening in workplace is varied. We listen to the description of a product or a proposal with a ear for details. We listen to colleagues and clients in order to evaluate critically what we hear or to give support. We can derive aesthetic pleasure from what we hear or provide feedback. We also carry out instructions that are communicated. Let us look into some of the types of listening. The way we listen changes with the purposes for which we listen. We employ different types of listening, and some of them are casual, enthusiastic, concentrated, evaluative, interactive, empathetic, and active or reflective listening. What is casual listening? The listener is not particular about getting the subject matter of the message in this type of listening. So he does not get it, and the output of listening is zero. Enthusiastic listening is here the listener wants to be entertained. Its output is positive participation in the entertainment. Concentrated listening, here the listener hopes to get some information. Its output is informal oral communication. For example, listening to the radio, TV programs, railway and airport announcements, etc. Then, evaluative listening. Here, the listener looks forward to evaluate an oral message. Its output is the ability to evaluate the message, store it, and recall it when required. For example, listening to classroom lectures, workshops, and seminars. Then, interactive listening. Here, the listener expects to indulge in proper interaction. Its output is effective listener speaker relationships. For example, group discussions, meetings, and job interviews. It demands concentration, involvement, and responsibility. For example, in the administrative instructions, formal conversations, suggestions, requests, and telephone calls. Then the empathetic listening. Here, the listener is concerned about the speaker's feelings, emotions, and state of mind. Its output is consideration for the speaker's intention, attitude, and also his thoughts. Then the last is the active or the reflective listening. Here, the active or the reflective listening is when you are genuinely interested in hearing and understanding the speaker's words, feelings, and thought processes. Here, you verify and clarify your understanding by asking questions or by repeating what was said. So, these are some of the types of listening which are very important to understand its importance. Then comes the TQLR strategy. What is meant by TQLR strategy? Before the presentation, listeners can formulate questions that are anticipative and which will be answered during the presentation. If the questions are not answered, listeners may post the questions to the speaker. In such cases, an additional strategy called TQLR is applicable. T means tune in. Here, the listener must tune into the speaker and the subject mentally, assimilating everything known about the subject and shutting out all distractions. Then, Q means question. The listener should mentally formulate questions. Then, listen. The listener should organize the information as it is received, anticipating what the speaker will say next and reacting mentally to everything heard. Then, reviewing. Here, the listener should go over what has been said, summarize, and evaluate constantly. These are some of the important techniques which is included in the listening skill. Listening skill was not given sufficient emphasis as a communication skill in the past, and therefore it has been given added importance recently. An effective listener is motivated to listen, is familiar with the main points and the other details of the message, and is able to think ahead and make relevant predictions. They ask questions to clarify whether the speaker has understood the message or not. So, these things, in short, a listener has a specific purpose. And so, listening occurs in a variety of ways, whether for common, educational, or professional use. It's always an irony that listening, which is the first skill to be acquired and used, is taught last. So we have classes on training given on speaking, reading, and writing. But listening is not given much importance, and people are not aware of its benefits. So we need to understand the importance of listening skills, and we have to practice on how to learn this particular skill, which improves a lot of training, which requires energy and discipline. So, here in this session, I have given you some inputs about the importance of listening skill. I'll get back to you with the importance of speaking skills in my next recording. Thank you.